Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, the polls are almost now at the point that I've been talking about some time ago, where maybe, just maybe, the opposition from within the Conservative Party against Boris Johnson's leadership will really come to the fore, potentially over autumn. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So ever since April, when Keir Starmer became leader of the Labour Party, he has been absolutely crucifying Boris Johnson in Prime Minister's questions. Every time Boris Johnson has shown how useless he is, it hasn't just been Starmer's excellent inquisition of Johnson in Parliament, but the Conservatives themselves have been making a right hash. We've had, you may have noticed, the odd disaster in 2020, and not all of them have been caused by the Conservatives, but all of them have been made worse by the Conservatives. And this has not escaped people's notice. So you've got, on the one hand, a real erosion of trust in the Conservatives, and particularly Boris Johnson. And on the other hand, people looking at the alternative and going, Labour's looking a bit more grown up now. Keir Starmer, he sounds all right. And the gap between them, which was huge, has been narrowing. And the latest poll results now put voting intention, the Conservatives are still ahead. There hasn't been a takeover yet. But it now puts voting intention on 40% Conservative, 38% Labour. That is very, very close. And there's been a sudden surge very recently. Now, this is via YouGov. I often use these because they're one of only two polling companies that, when their political polling is put to the test, is accurate. In other words, when they come out with their polls before people go to the polls in an election, the actual election results are very close. Certainly well within the margin for acceptable error in statistics. And why has there been a sudden drop in support for the Conservatives and a sudden rise for Labour? The exams disaster, the latest disaster. There's been a massive loss of confidence in the Conservative Party, very much like when the Dominic Cummings saga was going on as well. And I said at the time that you can see this trend, and it'll go up and down, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, okay, there's now a 2-point difference between Conservative and Labour. It will only get tighter and then Labour will overtake. No. Something else may happen, and the Conservatives go up and Labour go down. You'll get this little, zigzagging, but the trend is very much a narrowing, and people mustn't be impatient. It can't happen really quickly. I said a little while ago, I wouldn't expect Labour to actually overtake the Conservatives anytime soon. The reason being, yes, people are losing confidence with the Conservative Party, but when it comes to voting intentions, you need an alternative. Now, people may look at Labour and go, well, they've got a new leader and they might be better. They don't know that yet, because they will not know that until Labour start announcing what their policies for government would be. And they will not do that, and they'd be crazy to do that when there isn't an election round the corner. Because why would you announce a firm policy now that you may have to change, because there's going to be an awful lot of change? We do not know what the shape of the economy is going to be in a few years' time. We do not know what our relationship with the EU is going to be in a few years' time, or with other international partners around the world. We may not have international partners. We may actually be an isolated island. We do not know. So any policies could be subject to change. And then as soon as you announce a cast iron policy and then you change it, you seem to be U-turning there, Starmer. What's going on? At the moment, they would be absolutely crazy. Never mind all the people moaning at Starmer to make a stand on something. Political suicide to do so. Fortunately, most of the calls for him to do that come from the people who supported the person who put Labour in the position it's in now. So hopefully we can safely dismiss. Not that I like dismissing anyone. People are entitled to their views, but, But I'm looking at the situation now, I have to say, and I'm thinking, do you know what? Labour might overtake the Conservatives at some point. All it would take is another disaster, like Brexit, that could actually shift it the other way completely. We may well find out that by the end of the year, Labour are in the lead, which would be remarkable. That shouldn't really be happening. And I would think Conservative MPs are thinking the same thing. Because I also said in the polls as well, Keir Starmer is being, in terms of these polls, more people think that Keir Starmer would make a competent Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. Now, from the Conservative point of view, that is not necessarily a disaster, because you'll just think to yourself, yeah, we obviously can't go into the next election with Boris Johnson because he's not seen as credible. But we're all right with him at the moment because the Conservatives themselves are okay at the moment. And what I said was, and this is still to be tested, this is still a prediction, at the point at which the Labour Party, not just the Labour leader, but the Labour Party is looking in the polls like it's overtaken the Conservative Party in terms of voting intentions, that's when Conservative MPs will be worried, because then they'll be thinking, well, hang on a minute. It's one thing, if you're ahead of the polls, even if it's on a downward trend, if you're ahead in the polls and you stay ahead in the polls, once you get rid of your leader, the new leader comes in, you get a bit of a bounce back anyway, and you can play a defensive game. Once you go down, once you're not in the lead in the polls, that's a very different thing, because that plays in people's minds, because then members of the public will be looking at these polls and going, a lot of people see Labour as the best party to lead. And that'll get in them, and then they'll maybe start to look at Labour and think, yeah. And they'll look at the Conservatives and go, yeah, this hasn't gone well. Because at the moment, let us face facts, we have a Conservative leadership who, despite the fact the Conservative Party have been in government for 10 years, seem quite happy to say how badly off we are. Oh yeah, things are terrible, absolutely dreadful. You've been in power for 10 years. Yeah, it's really bad. But don't worry, we're the ones to sort it out. Are you? Just like you've sorted out COVID, just like you sorted out the exams, and then in 6 months' time, just like you sorted out Brexit, are you really the people to make things better? Because actually, and you may start to get a lot of people going, actually, now that I think about it, you're really the people that put us in this hole, because we weren't actually in a terrible hole before you came into power. We had the global recession. That wasn't good. But other countries came out of that. We never really seemed to come out of that, did we? So Conservative MPs at that point will be starting to think, even if they're thinking to themselves, Johnson's got to go at some point, maybe we let him do Brexit first and then get rid of him. Maybe they'll be thinking, but we can't give the next person in too tough a time either. We still want to win the next election. And this is the sort of poll result that, if sustained, there may not be any, reactionary behaviour from these Conservative MPs. But if this is sustained, if it stays at this narrow lead, even if it goes up and down a little bit, but if it stays at round about 2 or 3 points gap, and then another disaster hits, and even though I say Brexit, I mean, we've got the combination of winter flu and more COVID to come yet. It could really see Labour overtake. And it may well be that those Conservative MPs at the moment thinking to themselves, yeah, we want rid of Johnson, but who do we really get in place that we trust to deliver the Brexit that we want? Wouldn't it be better to just stick with Boris? Maybe they'll start to think to themselves, we're losing too much. He's too expensive. And that's the thing. It may well be in their minds now he's too expensive. And at the moment, of course, MPs are still off. Parliament is not sitting, so they're not talking to each other as much as they might ordinarily. In a couple of weeks, Parliament returns, and then they'll start having those conversations again. And it may well be that in another few weeks, questions are asked of Boris Johnson by those backbench MPs. Those backbench MPs. Where did that come from? And maybe his answers start to be questioned a little bit more. So this is very good. And just as a final little point, I will also point out, if you're a Labour supporter like myself, very encouraging piece of news. But although the polling is now showing a real swing back towards Labour, narrow gap now, although Labour still behind. In the north, where Labour lost an awful lot of seats, a hell of a lot of seats, it's what gave the Tories their majority. the so-called red wall crumbled and went blue, that's actually where you've seen a swing back towards Labour. So an awful lot of those people in the north that seem to prefer the Conservatives to Labour for mad reasons, but we don't need to go into that. This polling suggests that actually on that regional basis, a lot of them have swung back, which is encouraging. It's encouraging for me anyway. But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.